of the Attack podcast. Obviously, this is a Manchester United podcast. My name is Sean. I will be hosting the podcast. I'm so excited to start it. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and it's been difficult to find the time, but I'm looking forward to diving in. I'm not trying to get famous or anything like that. I just am a guy who loves talking about United, loves talking about football, and just looks for any opportunity to do that. And it felt like the time was right. Obviously, I'm a big Manchester United fan. If you could see the room right now, there'd be all sorts of memorabilia and shirts and obviously books and things all over the place. Maybe I'll give you guys a little look at the studio a little later on in other episodes, but for now I'd like to dive right in. Full disclosure, I am a mental health professional, so I'm a therapist. I've been a practicing mental health professional for the better part of a decade. That being said, because so much of worldwide politics, economics, culture, and yes, psychology ties into football, I wanted to put out a disclaimer, and has been told that I need to put out a disclaimer that just because I'm a licensed mental health professional, nothing that I discuss, no opinions that I share, none of that is professional advice. None of that should be taken as professional advice. I just want to put that out there. So please just keep that in mind. These are my opinions or the opinions of future guests. No matter how qualified or licensed or experienced we are, this is not professional advice. So keep that in mind. That being said, I'd love to dive right in. I wish that we could get started on a more positive note than the Brentford match, the 1-1 draw on the weekend. But we don't have a choice, do we? It is what it is with United. It's a toss of the coin, which United's going to show up on a given match day. And we just did not show up, did we? I mean, what was that performance? I hesitate to even call that a performance. I was watching with a friend of mine at his house, and the whole time I was watching it, is the phrase that I used, and he and I were talking, the phrase we used over and over again was just too slow. United were too slow just in every way. We looked like we were running it just a couple notches below speed wise. We looked like we were a step behind mentally. Weren't really just making a decision in the final third, too much hesitation. And the problem with that was, you might be able to afford a second or two delay, an extra touch here or there sometimes in the final third. But we couldn't do that against Brighton. If you watch the match, Brentford got back into their defensive shape so fast. They obviously, put two banks of four, were hitting us on the counter, which they're entitled to do, and they're good at it, especially now that they've got some players back like Ivan Toney. But with that, United need to be faster, and if you're not going to be fast, if you're not going to hit them on the break and try, and you're going to let them get back into their shape, fine, you don't have to. But when you do that, you also have to be able to unlock that defense, and we just couldn't. You can't really do that with players like Rashford or Garnacho or even Bruno. I might hesitate to even say, they're just not that. They're not those kind of players. They're not patient. They're not methodical. They're not, let's keep hold of the ball until we can find an opening. They are just full on, let's go, 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 which has its uses and has a time and a place, but that was not the time and the place for it. We just looked tired, hesitant. I would say intimidated even too. We were getting pressed. And that's nothing new for United, right? We tend to piss our pants when teams press us. We can't move the ball quickly. We don't have the players who are good enough on the ball to play that kind of one-touch pass and move. We have maybe one or two players who can do that, which I'll get to a little later. But you don't look to guys like McTominay, Maguire, Rashford, Garnacho, or even Bruno when you're trying to play that. Manu can do it. but even he looked a little overrun. But we just looked knackered. When we did manage to string a few passes together, it was just too much hesitation, and we're just not good at breaking them down. It was good to see Mason Mount get back. Obviously, it's been a long road to recovery. I'm not the kind of person who wants to see injured players rushed back, but at the same time, the sheer amount of injuries that we've had this season, you don't really have a choice, do you? You know, if they're on the bench, you have to just play them till they break, especially with just a few matches left. It is the business end of the season. There is a lot to play for still, and we do have a cup final coming up, so I can see both sides of the argument there, but it's difficult, right? So Mount was back. It was fantastic to see him kind of open his account in the United shirt, get his first goal. However, it was short-lived, wasn't it? You know, once again, as we've seen many times, you know, especially early in the season in the Champions League, you know, a simple cutback to the edge of the box, because all of our defenders are sucked into the play with the ball. In this case, Ivan Toney sees us concede. You know, it's a wide open at the edge of the box. No one's there marking the space, marking the runners, and it's a simple little pass from a center back, no less. You know, was it Christopher Ayer got in there and just put that ball in the net in few moments after we scored. I mean, that's inexcusable, that defending. You know, I've seen it said all around social media, on YouTube. A lot of content creators have lamented, you know, United's tendency this season to concede within minutes after scoring. You know, and in football, statistically speaking, you are most likely to concede a goal within the few minutes of scoring. That's the time period when you're most likely to concede. You know, and it seems like United are just the ones who are keeping that statistic alive almost, right? You know, how many times have we done that this season? It's, you know, we keep the stat alive and kicking, you know, no pun intended. The players just switch off. I mean, that's day one stuff, right? This is under 15 stuff. This is like youth level stuff. You don't switch off when you score a goal. Yeah, celebrate. Yeah, get excited. Yeah, get pumped. But don't switch off. You can't. And we've seen it time and time again this season cost us points. This is another example. We shouldn't have really won that, right? Based on the performance, we were not the better side. Brentford were by far the better side. They outperformed us all over the pitch with just energy, fight, just determination. They pressed us. They got back into shape. They knew what they needed to do, and they got the job done, and we just didn't look interested. We looked like jet lagged almost. It looked like the international break was too hard for some players. Maybe they just are rusty after not playing. I mean, it's not good. For a side that struggles on set pieces as well, you know, we give away a lot of corners. Brentford had 14 corners. We had 4. That is not good. You know, I always get a little worried whenever we give away a corner, because I just don't trust us defending them. We were not good. You know, nobody really seems to want to attack the ball when it's coming into our box. Nobody wants to, and we struggle to clear the danger, right? I don't know if they're just the players or Ten Hag are stuck in this, always try to play out from the back, no matter what. But you can't do that when you're defending a corner. You can't try to bring the ball down and try to slowly pass it or dribble it out of the box. Just get rid of it, right? That's your first job on those set pieces. Clear the danger, and we can get back into shape and we can figure it out from there. But we're not good at, we can't clear our browser history, let alone a loose ball in the box. This is embarrassing. As far as more numbers go, I mean, we committed twice as many fouls as Brentford. We committed 14 to their 7, which again just tells you we were a step behind. You know, you're late in the tackle, you're just making unnecessary fouls, you're getting caught like that in those 50-50 duels. It means you're a step behind. We just look leggy. I know a lot of people have been going on about the shots we've conceded this season, and I'll agree, it's not good. There was a time where I would look at the shots conceded, and you could say, like, okay, a lot of those shots were not even on target or they were blocked. But the numbers recently have not made for good reading. Brentford, for instance, had 31 shots. We had 11. Bruno had more shots than Rashford, Hoyland, and Garnacho combined. I mean, that's not good. And I know Bruno, I mean, a lot of those are just hopeful, low percentage, just outside the box shots, but that's not good when our attackers are not getting enough of the ball. We just couldn't keep hold of it. Now you want to add some context to the stats, something that I believe a lot of fans and the media for sure don't do. I like to look at some of these stats in terms of like triangulation, like when you're finding a location of something, whether that's clean sheets. I hate clean sheets as a statistic for goalkeepers, right? Because it doesn't tell the whole story. What if a goalkeeper who faces 50 shots in a match, for instance, could have a clean sheet, and a goalkeeper who faces no shots could have a clean sheet? But I don't see clean sheets as the metric of the Golden Glove. I don't like that. I want to look at save percentage. I want to look at shots faced. Triangulation, 3 context to do. So in this case, the case of conceded shots, how many were on target and where did the shots come from? A few months back, we had started to see United concede a lot of shots, but a lot of those shots were off target, like I said, and from outside of the box, meaning we were shutting up shop, right? In recent weeks, though, it's gotten worse. We've kind of digressed a little bit, or regressed a little bit. 24 of Brentford shots were from inside the box, and 4 of those hit the bar. A lot of those probably had a lot to do with the corners, headers and things when the ball's bouncing around in the box. But that just means, again, poor defending. A few months ago, United were able to limit the opponents to long-range efforts, but just a few weeks now, and opponents are getting more and more chances from inside the area. And you just like I said about set pieces, you ride your luck when you can see this many shots, or when you give away so many corner kicks or free kicks. Eventually, though, that luck's going to run out, and I hope Brentford's late equalizer wasn't kind of a precursor, like a sign that the luck is running out with some of that, and maybe we're just teams have figured it out, or we've just like I said, just kind of regressed a little bit in terms of defending our area. But it's a warning sign for sure, right? Brentford had 84 touches in our box. 84. That's ridiculous. Want to know how many touches United had in Brentford's box? 15. 15. That's not good enough at all. Again, can't string 2 passes together to make a third. We can't hold on to the ball. We've got wingers who, rather than pass and move, want to think that they, like Rashford. One of the things that bugs me so much about Rashford is that he's still making the same mistakes he's been making since he was an 18, 19-year-old. He thinks he can take on the world with the ball at his feet, which means he's constantly running into groups of defenders thinking that a little bit of trickery and a little bit of speed will see him create some space and get a shot off. Granted, he's had to do that for years because United have not had just a good striker. And we saw he and Garnacho kind of switch up a little bit a month or so ago and start finding Hoyland a lot more. There was a point in time where Hoyland had like the fewest touches of any striker in the league because our wingers were just being selfish. But we lose the ball because the wingers think they can take on the world. They don't want to pass and move. They don't, whether it's a selfishness, whether it's they just don't have the footballing IQ tactically, which we can get into as well. I don't know, but it's a problem. And if you look at our GD, which is 0 still, it's not good. It's the worst in like the top 10. I think West Ham's is worse, but I think they have a negative GD. But ours is for Manchester United, that's just not okay. Some other numbers: Brentford won over 20 more of their duels than we did. So 4 more of their tackles than we did, which was 70% of their total tackles. Compared to ours, we just won 50% of ours. And they completed nearly 60% of their attempted dribbles. We only completed 36. Again, people not holding on to the ball. It's I love wingers and midfielders too who can keep the ball, keep it on the ground and carry it. That's why I love Kabi Manu. We haven't had a midfielder like Kabi Manu in years. When was the last time we had a midfielder who can carry the ball? Pogba, maybe? When he got going, Pogba holding the ball in our half under pressure was a bit of a problem, right? It's kind of like Christian Eriksen, but Mainu keeps the ball, keeps it on the ground, which I think Ten Hag likes too. It was clear Ten Hag wanted to use Mainu from the beginning of the season because I think you think you saw it with like Van Gaal too. I think Dutch managers in general, to a certain extent, they don't like the high risk, low percentage long balls over the top. They like to keep things on the ground, keep the ball moving, be patient, pass and move, find the channels, find the half spaces, and play the high percentage, low risk pass until you create an opportunity. And United haven't tended to do that. We've tended to be, as the podcast title implies, attack, counter attack, fast build up, which we'll get into in a little bit, but that's not something you're probably going to see from Ten Hag. Some more numbers here. This is from the Telegraph, by the way. So 31. Brentford shots against United is at least 2 more than they have managed in any game for 5 years, and it's also 2 more than they managed in an EFL. Oh, sorry, that was a separate stat. 84. Brentford's touches in the box, like we talked about. The most touches in the box in the league since 2020. Since I think that was a City versus Norwich match, I want to say. 2. United joined Sheffield United as the only sides to concede 30-plus shots in more than one league game this season. So only Sheffield United and Manchester United have conceded 30-plus shots in more than one league game. So that's record-breaking once again, right? Not the kind of records we want to break, but man, 498. It's a fun number, right? United have faced more shots in the Premier League this season than Man City and Arsenal combined, who their combined is 482. We have 498. Only 3 teams have faced more than United, and 2 of them are in relegation battles. This is relegation form, relegation performances we're looking at here. And I would even dare to say it's not necessarily the form and performances of a relegation side, because we've seen sides like Luton, for instance, play harder than us. This is embarrassing again. 15, we had touches, 15 touches in Brentford's box. Just 1 more than Ivan Toney's total by himself in United's box. Guys, not cool. On paper, it just tells you that Brentford fought harder, they dug deeper, they were more fit, and just better, period, right? If you rely more on the eye test, though, just watch the match and you'll see, we face more shots in the league than other sides combined. That's what I said already. The fact is, we're getting worse, right? With just 9 league matches remaining and 27 points to play for, United simply can't afford to drop points if we want Champions League football. I think Gary Neville said on Sky Sports the other day about the Brentford match that he just couldn't believe what he was watching. Honestly, though, given what we've seen from United this season, I didn't find it unbelievable at all, the way we played. It was frustrating. It was very, very disappointing and disheartening, even, really, just to see that regression after the match against Liverpool, after the fight that we put up against Liverpool, just to see just how just bipolar we are when it comes to the way we perform. But it definitely wasn't unbelievable, again, given what we've seen this season. As fans, right, it's rough. And as human beings, we tend to want somebody to blame when things go wrong, right? That's human nature, right? We need to be able to point our finger at somebody and say, you know what, this is your fault. This happened because of you. But who do we blame? Right? Who carries the blame for something like this Brentford match? Maybe start with the players on the pitch. Let's take a look at them. Did the international break throw off momentum? That foundation that we maybe have built in recent weeks. Our form hasn't been horrible. We had a great win against Liverpool, knocking them out of the FA Cup. Did the international break tire out some of these players? Garnacho, I think, flew all the way to the west coast of the U.S., right? And had to fly back after his international duty. Bruno, maybe. The guy never misses a minute unless he's suspended or something, right? But who else actually played during the international break? Hoyland played a little bit. I know Denmark and United kind of collaborated to manage his minutes because he's still coming back from an injury, which is good. I know international duty is a big deal for players, but there's a reason the phrase, club over country exists. And I'm not trying to say one is better than the other. This is a busy time of the year for United, and a very important time of the year. And Højlund's managing an injury, and it was almost unnecessary for him to travel. Same with Lissandro Martinez. I did not like that he traveled. But Højlund's one of those players whose minutes are being managed after his injury. Same with Licha, same with Mason Mount. I think I heard earlier today, I can't remember where I heard it, no team that played away from home this past weekend won their matches. So maybe the break did kind of play a role, more travel after that travel, or maybe it was just the break itself from league play can sometimes do that. I know I'm not a professional, but I still kick a ball around a lot when I can. But if I go a little while without playing, I'm rusty. Takes a minute, and it's easy to pick up injuries when you dive right in after missing so much time. Where was the energy though against Brentford? Where was the fight? Where was the motivation? Did anybody stand out? Did anybody have a good performance? Maybe Onana. Dallo made some good tackles. Other than that, I can't really think of anyone. I don't know how you can dig so deep and play so hard against Liverpool, our heated rivals, but then just put up such a flaccid display against Brentford. Where's the captain? Where's Bruno on the pitch when his teammates need to be picked up, need to be pushed, need to be pulled sometimes? Where is he when it comes to leading by example? I know he's knackered. He looked dead on his feet against Liverpool in those dying minutes, but he was fit enough to play for Portugal, fit enough to travel, fit enough to start. But a lot of it starts up here on the pitch. When things aren't going well, who do you look to? What do you do? That's what the captain's armband is for. Some might argue that motivation begins and ends with the manager, right? But how can a manager motivate from the touchline? How much motivation should professionals in their mid to late 20s, internationals, Champions League winners, how much motivation should these players need to show up for a match when they know, they're looking at the table, they know what they need to do, they know how many points, they know they have a cup final. How much motivation do they need to let that sink in, to internalize that and kind of push themselves? These are professionals, and that's part of it. It's not just how well you kick a ball or dribble or defend. It's a lot of the game is played up here, right? And that motivation, that resilience is all a part of that. Ask any parent, for instance, teacher, business owner, or any sports coach, really. How easy is it to motivate others to follow? How do you get others, whether it's children, teammates, employees, how do you get them to buy into a vision and then fight for that vision? It's not easy. As a mental health professional myself, I can tell you that it's not enough to just simply tell people what or how to do something. You have to teach them and help them develop ways to do so intrinsically, right? Internally, in a way that, like the same way you motivate yourself to clean the house when it's the last thing you want to do. You motivate yourself to get out of bed to go to work, even when you maybe hate your job and you're exhausted. That is intrinsic motivation. Being able to do it without someone pushing you all the time. How do you get people to do that without having to continually correct them or monitor them? It's complicated because we're complicated. But all that being said, that the mentality within this squad is absolutely an issue that needs to be addressed. How can it not be, considering the roller coaster United's been on, over the last couple of years, especially. When Ollie got sacked, I feel like it all started to kind of go downhill. We had our worst ever season when Ragnick took over. And I'm not blaming Ragnick. It's just, I think that it was just so toxic and just negative and just broken. And Ten Hag, what he did last year, I think it helped, but that was like giving Tylenol for a broken leg without setting the leg and putting a cast on it. Like, it helped, and I'm not trying to take away from that. I think that what Ten Hag did last year was great. Third place, better win percentage in his first 50 league matches, or first 50 matches with a Premier League club than I think both Pep and Klopp had. And he won a trophy and got us to another final, the FA Cup final. We won't talk more about the FA Cup final last year, but we also look on track to get to another final, hopefully. And I'm not trying to just count my eggs before they're hatched, right? We still have to play Coventry. But that's not a bad thing, right? 3 cup finals in his first 2 seasons in a new league. That's a big deal. And I think it's something that I wish people would keep in mind a lot, because I think it's easy for recency bias to kick in after a bad result or after a poor performance. I think it's easy to forget about the positives. And yeah, some people will say he overachieved last year, but he still achieved it. So we can't ignore that. Again, getting back to mentality, motivation is another part of it. But resilience, I think, or the lack thereof, as I've mentioned earlier, is another one. How do you respond to mistakes, adversity and setbacks on the pitch, or even over the course of the whole season? When we lose players to injuries, when we get knocked out of competitions, when there are off-field issues like what happened with Antony, or what's going on with Sancho, or last season what happened with Cristiano Ronaldo, or the takeover announcement that dragged on for like over a year, but Ten Hag was the one left to face all the media scrutiny and questions, and he doesn't have anything to do with the takeover. How do you stay resilient amidst all that, on top of everything that's going on the pitch? What do you do when you give the ball away and the other team score from that counterattack? How do you fight as a player? How do you fight this silence, that inner voice in that moment that's trying to tell you, like, it's over, like, you're never going to get this back, you're never going to win, you can't do it. And I think you've seen the effects of that. Too easily do these United players let their heads drop or step off the gas when things don't go their way. And we've seen it for a while now. It's not just a Ten Hag thing. It's not just an Ollie thing or a Ragnick thing or a Mourinho thing. It's something going on in this club that either is disheartening and discouraging the players, or there's some sort of message trickling down from above that there's just not an effort, that's needed. It's fine. Everyone, doesn't matter how you do. I mean, when the ownership basically only cares about Champions League, how are you supposed to motivate the players to care about anything like that? How are you supposed to motivate them to push that extra mile to fight for first or second? When the message coming down from the top is, top 4 is fine, or you're fired, basically. And again, it's not enough to just say that Ten Hag should handle it. Like, it's Ten Hag's job. That's the manager's job, because every player is so different. If you're a parent and you've got children, or a teacher, it's, yes, they're your kids, and you want to have kind of a set guideline, right, of rules and expectations and consequences. But at the same time, any parent would tell you, no 2 children are the same, and you can't necessarily parent or interact with them the same way, because they're all so different. Every player is different. Helping each player find a unique way to implement motivation or situational resilience. It's not an overnight job, and Ten Hag isn't a mental health professional. How is that his job to figure out the psychological intricacies of that? He's not. Should he know about nutrition as well, physical health, finances? It's not. I'm not an expert on electricity. I can't sit here and try to fix the electricity by myself. I have professionals who know how to do that, and I think maybe it's a mental health professional in me, but it's shocking to me that United took so long to bring in a psychologist. We just did that, last year? And I hope it's a case of better late than never in that regard, because these players need some tools to handle that mental and emotional aspect of being a professional footballer, and to wait that long to do it just shows that where the focus was and where the priorities were, or maybe where the naivete was. Maybe the Glazers just don't think about those kind of things. When you don't even have a structure behind the scenes in terms of recruitment or director of football or technical director or CEO or whatever you want to call it, when you don't have that, and the owners are never in the country, I would doubt that they'd even watch matches. I mean, we saw them show up to the Carabao Cup final last year, but that's the first time I think they've made an appearance in years. When you have that going on again, A, how's anyone supposed to know what's needed? But B, what kind of message does that send, right? I'm a business owner myself, and if I was as absent as the Glazers have been, I would not be shocked, if my employees just stopped caring, stopped trying, stopped, buying into, the vision and the plan, and I wouldn't blame them for it. That's bad leadership. And I think that, considering too how open and how destigmatized mental health has become in the last several years, you have a lot of footballers coming out and talking about, depression and things like that. I know the gambling thing has come up as well in recent years. I think it's becoming more and more destigmatized, and I think that's great as a mental health professional. I think the more we can talk about it, the less shame, the less insecurity, the less isolation there is, because the only thing worse than everybody knowing about what's going on is nobody knowing, right? And so I think that when a few footballers have come out and talked about it, and more sports psychologists are getting involved, and clubs are hiring more and more mental health professionals, I think that is only a good thing. So let's keep that up. Mentality issue, obviously, but quality, I think, is another huge problem, and we saw that against Brentford. We've seen it throughout the season. I don't like to slag off players, right? I like to support the players and the manager. You can criticize, right? But also demand better and support them and want them to do better. I don't think that it's slagging off, though, to point out that a given player or a given performance just wasn't good enough. I don't want to pick on anybody, but I will use McTominay for an example, right? He's kind of a problem for United. I love his energy. I love McTominay's dedication to the badge. When you think of Man United, like passion, energy, heart, when you think of Man United heart, McTominay is the player that comes to mind in this recent kind of decade, right? And you can see why Ten Hag and other managers love him. I mean, Mourinho created an award to give to him at the end of the season. What was that? The Manager's Player Award. I mean, you laugh about it, but I mean, there's something to be said about that. But aside from his passion, McTominay's all he has offered, especially this year. I mean, he's scored a lot of goals, give him that, but that's what he offers. He has a good shot. He seems to find himself in great positions in the box when we're trying to defend or attack set pieces, and he causes a bit of chaos. You can rely on him in that situation, but when he's not doing that, he doesn't really offer that. He does make those late runs too on the edge of the box. I did forget about that. No, he is pretty good at making those kind of third man runs. But the thing is, we have players at United who already do those things. We have a striker now. We have defenders on set pieces who are tall. We have players like Bruno who will get on a ball at the edge of the box, make that late run. We have players who are supposed to be doing that, and McTominay is not supposed to be doing that. So I think he's not a bad player. I think he's a fine player. I just don't think he's not a bad player. He just doesn't have the level of what you need at Manchester United, unless he's good being a squad player, which for his sake, I would think that he would want to be a starter someplace like an Everton or a West Ham or someplace like that. But his limitations impact United. It impacts his teammates. It impacts how we play. So there's a concept in football, I read it in one of these books back here, called the O principle, right? And the O principle asserts that a player's detriments, their flaws, they aren't simply added on top of each other, but they're multiplied due to their impact on their teammates, kind of like throwing a pebble into a pond. It's the pebble may be small, just like a player's given detriment, like McTominay's instance, like a poor positioning. But the ripples that the pebble creates when you throw it in the pond, they grow, they expand, they impact other things. So McTominay's limited passing, we saw him put some balls behind Højlund, I think it was against Liverpool, which, caused some frustration. It means his limited passing means the attackers don't receive the ball, or it's played behind them. And that kills our attack. Again, going back to what I said earlier about too slow, those little microseconds count. An extra touch or two on the edge of the box counts. A ball that's played behind an attacker versus into their path, that costs time. That's precious time that can kill an attack, an opportunity. And before you know it, the other team's defense is back into shape. McTominay's inability to read the game, make himself an option to receive the ball when we're trying to play out from the back. It means we lose an outlet. He's basically taking himself out of the game, and that impacts his teammates. Other players have to then move out of their positions to make up for that. Other players have to drop back to receive the ball instead of keeping the momentum going. See what I mean? It multiplies. It impacts everyone else, because now it's like a mobile above a baby's crib, right? You pull one part of that, the whole thing moves. When McTominay's doing one thing over here, but he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, other players then have to move around him to accommodate that. And again, not trying to pick on McTominay. I love McTominay. I love his passion. He's not what we need. And we can improve on McTominay is the point I'm trying to make. Who else do you blame? Ten Hag? Blame the manager? We can look at tactics, right? Despite what people say, Ten Hag does have a style of play, and we have seen it on numerous occasions. I love my ESPN Plus subscription. I watch a lot of Eredivisie football, and I got to know Ten Hag a lot during his last few seasons at Ajax. And if you didn't watch his Ajax side play, especially during that massive season when they went on that run in Champions League, that Ajax side played more like a vintage United side than United have played in years. It was fast. It was patient, though. It was forward, but also knowing when to pass back when needed. It was like shooting a bow and arrow. You have to go back sometimes in order to go forward. And it was a thing of beauty to watch. And it's no coincidence that they got to their first Champions League semifinal in years. Ten Hag, people like to think, Ajax are the giants of the Eredivisie. Ajax hadn't won the Eredivisie in years before Ten Hag arrived, and they went on a tear of three? It was technically 4 Eredivises in a row. The one didn't count because the COVID season canceled it out. But I think points-wise, they were pretty much guaranteed to win anyway, so they kind of got robbed. But Ten Hag's Ajax side were good, and then you have to also include that the Ajax side gets stripped every single season of all its best players. And yeah, they have a good pipeline, and they have the Ajax style implemented from youth setup, but you still have to almost start over again in many ways. And so tactics, he has a style of play. Now, he said, and this is one of the press conferences that made me a little angry with Ten Hag, is when he said he can't play the Ajax way. That's why you were hired. That's what we thought we were getting. But to a degree, I understand what he's saying. We don't have the players to play that Ajax style. We don't have players who are on that level as far as football IQ goes, tactical nous goes. He wants to play a high press with quick transition to attack when we win the ball. He wants to win the ball high up the pitch in the opposition half, which is why the defenders sit as high up as they do, is why everyone's pressing. The problem is our players just don't understand it. He wants to play out from the back. That's why we got Onana. That's why he wanted Andre Onana. Onana is very comfortable on the ball, and he has a good pass. We didn't get Onana, despite what people said when we got him. We didn't get Onana for just picking out long balls, because we've seen we don't do that. We don't counterattack. I wish we would more often, because I do think it's an underutilized aspect of Onana's game, that when you couple it with Rashford or Garnacho, even Bruno or Højlund, I think that we could utilize it more. It doesn't need to be the plan A, but I think we should be utilizing it more. The problem, though, with Ten Hag's style of play, aside from the quality, is the injuries. And this isn't me using injuries as an excuse, right? Everyone's got injuries, I get it. But when your style of play, building out from the back, right, that involves not only Onana, he's a big part of it, he's a part of that puzzle, but your defenders, and your main defensive signing in Lisandro Martinez is injured. A defender, our best defender on the ball. He can carry the ball, he can pick a pass, he's composed under pressure. How many times have we seen Martinez spin an attacker when they're trying to press him and just create a boatload of space for himself? When that guy's injured, I mean, you're then going back to guys like Maguire, Lindelof, who just aren't those kind of defenders. They can't play out from the back. And so your whole system, which starts from building out from the back, now has no foundation to build on. We had no left backs to the start of the season. Malacia has been gone. Although I did see I think he's back in training now. Malacia's been gone. Shaw is often injured. And we had to start the season, Amrabat playing left back. I was at that Crystal Palace match in Galatasaray earlier in the season, and Amrabat's not a left back. We bought him to play midfield, not to be this destroyer. He's a good ball progressing midfielder, kind of like a Michael Carrick. But this is where we've been at. We've been playing Lindelof at left back. We've been playing Wan-Bissaka at left back. And he did a job against Liverpool. For a guy coming back from months out to pocket Mo Salah. I think Mo Salah checks under his bed now for Wan-Bissaka before he goes to sleep, by the way. But this is what Ten Hag's had to deal with. And again, I'm not trying to use the injuries as an excuse, because you need to find a way to do it. But when you have a system of play and you're losing so many players, Mason Mount, Casemiro's been gone, Højlund was injured when we got him, what else are you supposed to do, right? Makes it difficult to play out from the back when you don't have those players. When we started getting the players back from injury, we started playing better, right? Who'd have thought? How many different center back partnerships have we had this season? 11, 12, 20? I don't even remember. Right? It was double digits for sure, but you can't. Playing out from the back doesn't work when there's not consistency and we don't have the players who have the traits that you're looking for. It's just truth. You can argue all you want. You can sit here and spout the rhetoric. He should be doing it better. He should be doing better. Well, you can't turn Harry Maguire into a ball-playing center back who's composed under a press. You can't make Victor Lindelof into that. Varane, I love Varane. He's world-class center back in his prime. He's not that either. We can't do that. And so it's try to do it with the players that we have because of the injuries, or it's go back to counterattack and then face all the criticism from the media and the fans, why is he still playing counterattack? It's lose-lose sometimes, I feel like, even though there are sides who play counterattack over and over, Spurs under Ange. Ange ball is just counterattack football, by the way. Jurgen Klopp has played counterattack football for 9 seasons, and people want to say he's this tactical genius. Yeah, he adds some gegenpress in there, but it's counterattack football. It's just, I wish people would stop going on and on about Klopp and his heavy metal and Ange ball, because it's just counterattack. So the real problem, though, with Ten Hag is that even though he has a style of play and he doesn't have the players to do it because of injuries or the quality of player, he still tries to play it. And I'll back my players. I'll back anyone who wears that shirt. But it's not a coincidence that the tactical managers that we've had, like Van Gaal, Ralph Rangnick, and now Ten Hag, it's not a coincidence that these guys have struggled with these players. These same players that Van Gaal had, Ten Hag's dealing with. Like Rashford, for instance. It's not a coincidence that they struggle. Well, counterattacking managers that we've had, like Mourinho and Oli, they fared a little better, right? Because those are the kind of players that we have. I think guys like Rashford and Bruno and Garnacho are just better suited to counterattacking football. And it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations, right? Reminds me of Van de Beek. Remember Donny? I'm a big Donny Van de Beek fan. He was, again, if you watched him when he was at Ajax, especially during that 18-19 season, Donny Van de Beek was one of the best midfielders in the world. Bar none, I won't hear anything other than that. He had the tactical nous, he had the football IQ. He's probably one of the best midfielders that United had when we signed him. The problem is, whether you want to believe Ollie didn't want him, Ollie didn't know how to use him. The guy barely saw any minutes, for one thing. How are you supposed to get any sort of familiarity with your teammates, the system, any sort of match rhythm when you barely played? But if you look at the kind of runs that Donny made, they were exactly the kind of runs that Ten Hag wanted his players to do when he was at Ajax. Give and go, run, look for the pass. How many times do we constantly see Donny pointing where he wanted the ball, putting his hand up, making the runs? The United players that we had, Rashford, the Brunos, they just weren't on the same page. Fred's, McTominay's, they weren't there. And Ollie, just didn't play that way. So Donny was just wasted. Nobody was on the wavelength he was at, and his talent was just wasted. And I feel for the guy. He still scored in his debut, though. So if that were an academy graduate, people would be going on about that for years. So I'll back Donny. It's just a shame, though. But it does beg the question, coming back to Ten Hag, if those are the kind of players he has, and those are the kind of players that he's gonna have, because we can't get rid of guys like Rashford or Bruno because they're expensive and they have long contracts. Is it a waste to have Ten Hag at the club if he's forced to kind of play a counterattack, or if he's unable to get all the players that he needs? And you can say, well, he spent this much. Well, he wanted Kim Min-jae and he got Johnny Evans on a free, and that's not a diss on Johnny Evans. Johnny Evans has been one of our better players this season, but you see, how many other managers are yeah, Kim Min-jae, oh no, sorry, we don't have that, but I can show you something in a free 36-year-old defender. I might have one of those in the back. Let me go grab one of those for you. Who does that? Pep Guardiola wants a new defender every single season, pretty much. And they're just here's a blank check. Go get yourself a new defender. Go get yourself a 100 million Guardiola, who, by the way, hasn't been great. We don't like Cancelo. He spoke up in training. Get rid of him. We don't need him anymore. We'll get you this guy. How many fullbacks did they buy? Can anyone tell me where Danilo is right now? This is the kind of differences you're going to get when you're at United. And again, I'm not trying to say, oh, it's the Glazers' fault. It's just, if you have a specific style of play, you don't get the players you need for it. It's going to be hard to play that way, and you might not see it all the time. And so I think people need to be a little bit more patient. But that being said, again, is Ten Hag a waste of time if the new owners don't want to play that style? Is it a waste of time for a manager like him and his style of play if we just don't have the players to do it? I think we can look at him a little bit more with team selection too. I think that his team selection at times is a bit baffling. But again, come back to injuries, I think Højlund and Onana were the only players that he signed that started against Brentford due to injuries or just poor quality or whatever. His talent ID leaves a little to be desired, right? It's always easy to look back in hindsight and say this player's crap, that player was a flop. But you don't know that when you sign a player. I mean, how many players have been signed in the league alone over the last few years that it just haven't worked out? It happens to every club. It happens with every manager. Anthony was great at Ajax, and it's not Ten Hag's fault that he cost 85 million. And Ten Hag identified him early in the summer, and the club just twiddled its thumbs and didn't get him till later. And Ajax were totally entitled to up their asking price. And at that late in the transfer window, what is Ten Hag supposed to do, right? I mean, get nothing, or you have to pay this much and miss out on another player or two because of the prices. I mean, this, again, it's Kim Min-jae all over again. And this is what we're dealing with here. But yeah, Anthony didn't work out. I think Ten Hag needs to, when it comes to his talent ID, I think Ten Hag needs to realize that he's at United now. He's not at Ajax anymore, and we can look a little higher. We can dream a little bigger when it comes to, and I'm not saying that means you sign all the Galacticos, the superstars. You don't fill the team with Bellinghams and Erling Haalands and all this, but I do think that you can aim a little higher and try to get a better player. I mean, look at like what Odegaard has turned into at Arsenal. We need to be looking at players who are better than the Anthonys or the Amrabats. Team selection, I think, sticking by players who are not playing well, and I don't just mean like they're missing shots. I mean like they're not putting in the effort, like Rashford. I think needs to put them on the bench for a week or two. Start them on a bench instead of putting them in the starting 11. I think that whether they're just poor or they're just tired, I think Garnacho's look tired. Plus, he's young. He's going to be inconsistent. I think managing that is going to be crucial. But these are the kind of decisions that cost managers their jobs. And I think that Ten Hag is going to realize that one way or the other, that his decisions, like the whole pebbles in a pond thing, little decisions here and there, whether it's what subs to make, what formation to go with, what starting 11 to do, like each one of those decisions makes big ripples and could make or break his time at United. I get that we have injuries, but you got to take calculated risks sometimes with the team selection. And learn when you can push it and when not. If Wan-Bissaka and Dalot are fit, why start Wan-Bissaka on the left, for instance? I think Rashford's game suffers from that decision because unlike, a left-footed left back to link up with and to overlap, Wan-Bissaka basically, due to his limitations on the left side or due to maybe Ten Hag just preferring him to sit back and defend, Rashford's kind of on his own, and he suffers. It's odd to me in that case that Ten Hag, a manager who prefers, left-footed players on the left and right-footed players on the right, at least in defense, would opt for a right-footed fullback in the left-back position rather than putting Dalot over there, who's played there many, many times, both in Portugal and in United, and who can put a cross in with his left foot as well. I think that those are the kind of decisions that they're just odd, right? Like when he came out and opted, said he wanted to play Evans over Varane due to tactical reasons. Like it's odd, and that's another example. You're never gonna see me get involved in a Ten Hag in or out debate. It's never gonna be a situation where I'm forced to choose one or the other. I'm just not like that. Again, going back to the earlier statement, maybe it's just the mental health professional in me, but I know the value of criticism with support. We can criticize and demand better from players and from managers, but you can also hope that they do better, that they learn. Maybe instead of calling them to get out of the club or get sacked or be sold after a poor result or a poor performance, you support them, you demand better, you criticize, you give feedback, but you demand better and hope that they learn from the mistakes and make changes. That's all you can do. Imagine what the world would be like if everyone just gave up on each other after mistakes. What kind of world would that be? What kind of relationships would we have? What kind of employment would we have if people make a mistake and we just give up and write them off without any sort of grace, any sort of conversation, any more opportunity to learn and talk about things and to grow and learn. I am a big believer that, kind of like apologies, the most important part of a mistake is what comes after. Is there a change? How would I know that you learned if you couldn't use your words and just say I'm sorry or yeah, that's my fault? Like, let's see some change, right? And that's all you can demand from Ten Hag or from the players. Ineos, Sir Jim, even Ten Hag, they know what's going to happen. They probably made the decisions, and it is what it is. That's why, to me, there's not really a point in getting involved in the Ten Hag, because it's not up to me. It's not my job. Ten Hag makes mistakes, and he does need to improve in key areas, but it's also only been, 18, 19 months? He accomplished a lot in his first season. Again, better than Klopp and Pep in their first seasons. He actually got a trophy, the first trophy available to him, and he got to two finals. That's huge for your first season in a new league, given what Ten Hag stepped into as well at United. That's almost miraculous. But he also stands to make it potentially to a third cup final in his first two seasons, and that's a big deal again. And I do think he still has the highest win percentage of any United manager post Sir Alex. So I would say that he's earned time, but again, it's not my decision. I know I'm not naive enough to believe that in the modern game that managers won't be sacked for less than that. Louis van Gaal won the FA Cup, missed out on Champions League, and was sacked like the next day after we won the cup. So I know exactly the way the game works. I know managers don't tend to last very long these days. And so, again, that's why I say it's not really up to me. I don't really see a point in getting involved in a Ten Hag in or out or any manager in and out. It is what it is. All we can do is take each match, give criticism, hope that they learn and do better, and go from there. All that being said, though, Ten Hag does need to do better. He does need to learn from his mistakes, and if you listen to Ajax fans, they tell you he's very stubborn. I think he needs to stop being so stubborn, and I do think that he's been a little naive sometimes when it comes to adjusting to the Premier League. The intensity, the tactics, whatever you want to say, I do think that there's a bit of a learning curve there coming from the Eredivisie. And Ajax, where a lot of the development and all that was kind of done for him, and you come into a United side where there is no recruitment strategy, there's no plan, there's no nothing as far as scouting, recruitment, anything like that goes. And Ten Hag was like, what is going on here? I mean, he walked into that, and so he's got to deal with all that as well. That's a conversation, though, for another episode, perhaps. I do have a lot when it comes to Ten Hag, so we can talk about that in another episode. So don't let me forget about that. But for now, as we try to move on from a disappointing point against Brentford, one we did not deserve, but I think Brentford will feel hard done by there. But let's look at United's race for a Champions League spot, and maybe take a quick look at Thursday's match against Chelsea, because that's right around the corner while we have some time here. So our main rivals for a spot in the Champions League are Aston Villa and Spurs. You can argue West Ham, but I wouldn't consider them too big a threat at this point in time. I think we have a game in hand, and they're already like 6 points behind. I can't remember off the top of my head. But Villa are fourth right now. They got 59 points. They played one more match, though, than both us and Spurs. So we do have a game in hand over Villa, which we'll make up for this week. Spurs are in fifth, 56 points, and then we have 48 points. We sit in sixth. Not great. West Ham are creeping up behind us again. They have 44 points, though, so they're 4 points behind us. But we do have a game in hand over West Ham as well. So I'm not too worried, but it is a little bit of squeaky bum time when it comes to the business end of the season. Villa's form has been a bit mixed. They got 2 draws, a big loss to Spurs. I think that was 4-0 loss to Spurs, so that was a big 6-pointer for them. And 2 wins, the most recent of which was against Wolves, who have been looking better, but their results wouldn't suggest that is the case either. Spurs have 3 wins and 2 losses in their last 5, and they scraped by with a 2-0 win, or 2-1 win against Luton Town, who have given a few top sides a black eye this season. I will say that they may not have won the fights, but they've let you know that they're there. And United have 3 wins, 1 loss, and a draw in our last 5 matches, making us, on paper at least, kind of the in-form side. But the only number that matters there is points, and we just don't have them. And watching us play, you'd be forgiven for thinking, for thinking that we were, relegation performance levels, just the way we've been playing. It's one of those things where people say the table doesn't lie, but if you look at the way we play and you look at where we are on the table, 6, you'd be forgiven for being a bit shocked. Based on performances alone, we should be probably in the bottom half. I think that it's a little bit embarrassing. I think that we're bottom half for like the XG table. None of the 3 sides, so none of Villa, Spurs, and United play each other between now and the end of the season. So no more 6-pointers from here on out. But we do all have to play top 6 sides still. Villa have to play City next. That's their next match. They play Arsenal a little more than a week after that, and then they play Liverpool in their penultimate match of the season. So their second to last match of the season, they play Liverpool. So big potential 9 points there for Villa. Spurs have a bit of a nightmare in the next few weeks. They have back-to-back-to-back. So 3 in a row. They play City, Arsenal, and Liverpool in a row. That's rough. City don't look as threatening as they did last season. I think that it's a mix of new players like Doku, who started strong but have kind of regressed to the mean. Players that they bought who, like Grealish, who wasn't great his first season, but then like peaked last season, but he's just been a ghost this season. And then new signings like Vardiol, who probably should not have cost as much as they paid, but it is what it is. So I think City are struggling a bit. Plus, we've seen, most of the time when City drop points, it's because Haaland just doesn't get the ball. I looked on FootMob when City have dropped points, and you click on Haaland, and it literally says he had the fewest touches of any outfield player or something, and it's keep him from getting the ball, you have a chance, right? So Spurs do have a bit of a nightmare. United play Chelsea this week, obviously. Chelsea have 3 wins and 2 draws in their last 5, so could go either way. We do play Liverpool after that, and while Ten Hag has a good record, which I don't let Liverpool fans forget about. He has a good record against Klopp. He's got 2 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss against Jurgen Klopp, which people like to not really talk about. But you don't know what United side are going to show up on a day, right? We had a historic performance against them the other week to knock them out of the FA Cup. That was one of my best memories in recent years of United. But then we show up, we get battered by Fulham. We concede late against Brentford after we score in stoppage time. Like, you just don't know. It's like a coin toss to see who shows up for us. We do have Arsenal and then Brighton. Brighton could kind of go either way. I don't think Brighton are as good as they were last season. I think, again, it's one of those situations where they've regressed to the mean after a new manager bounced last season. It doesn't help that Brighton lost McAllister and Caicedo in the summer. That's a big loss, and it's hard to replace, even though they've got good players. Like Pascal Gross is good. He never kind of shies away from a match, and they have some good players. They've been forced to rely on guys who they've had for a while that kind of fell off, like Lamptey. Remember when Lamptey was the big deal 2-3 seasons ago? He's kind of back now. And Ferguson, you can't rule out Ferguson. I do see us easily dropping points in both those matches, though. I think that we'll probably lose to Arsenal. I can see us getting a draw against Brighton. We might win, but I think a draw is probably more likely. We do host Arsenal, though. The match is at Old Trafford, but Arsenal and United could not be further apart when it comes to quality right now, and so it's just, if you're confident, I love your effort. I love your heart, but I just don't see it. I'm under no delusions that United won't drop points in our remaining matches, but we can't drop any more points against sides that we should be beating. We just can't. We need a result against Chelsea this week. There's just no other way around it, no other way to put it. We need a result against Chelsea. A win, anything other than a win, pretty much leaves us with just the FA Cup to fight for, which, again, I don't know how I feel about the FA Cup. I know we have a good chance against Coventry. It's probably the best draw we could hope for, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea beat City after they played a few weeks ago and they got that draw. And I would feel better against Chelsea in the cup match than in a cup tie than I would against City. But we'll see. The Chelsea match will be difficult, especially with the way that United just roll out a red carpet for the opposition in our midfield. It's a giant gap. It's non-existent. It's ridiculous the way that we have this low block and then this high press and then no midfield. It takes literally 1 or 2 passes for the opposition to find their way into our box. But I do think that we've got some players returning from injury, which we didn't have. And I was telling my buddy this a few weeks ago. I think that when teams like Villa and Spurs and Brighton and Newcastle haven't been great this season. When they start to regress to the mean after that bounce at the beginning of the season, that's when United are going to get these players back, and we're going to be able to rotate a bit. we're going to have the players that Ten Hag wants and the positions that he wants. I think those two things are going to kind of happen around the same time, and we could start to see our fortunes turn around. But it's just, again, it comes down to the players and the team selection. Ten Hag's got to get his team selection right, and the players have to show up on the day. Every game is a cup final between now and the end of the season, and we can't afford to slip. We can't let this slip, to quote a horrible former Liverpool player. But yes, I have a bit more confidence than I would have had a few weeks ago against Chelsea, just because of the injuries. But it doesn't take much for the opposition to outdo us when it comes to tactics or energy fight these days. So we will see. Again, team selection, I think, will be the difference maker for Chelsea. I don't think we can start McTominay. He basically removes a player from midfield when he starts. He doesn't really win a whole lot in the midfield. He doesn't really receive the ball a whole lot in the midfield, and he just wants to get forward. And it just leaves a gap, and Manu can't be left alone in midfield. He's a kid, and as good as he is on the ball, he can't do it on his own. I don't have a problem bringing McTominay on late, especially if we're getting peppered with set pieces or crosses and we need someone to kind of give some height. I don't have a problem with that, but he just can't start. He's out of position too frequently, and he just doesn't have the awareness and the IQ to know where he needs to be in a given moment. He just doesn't. With Ahmad back from suspension, a bullcrap suspension, by the way, getting a yellow for removing your shirt, especially after a goal like that against Liverpool in an FA Cup match, is just, it's got to be one of the dumbest rules in football. And it's, yeah, the less said about that, the better. But Ahmad's back from suspension. I might even start Ahmad over Rashford and actually play Garnacho on the left and Ahmad on the right. I think Ahmad offers something we don't have in a whole lot of our players, which is, again, that give and go, that pass and move, always kind of moving mentality. Not always moving as in just running forward, but always moving, always just finding space, making himself an option, giving, going, leaving the opposition kind of guessing what's going to happen. He was excellent against Liverpool when he came on. He won the ball to launch that counterattack that he scored from, and he deserves a chance to start. And if that means dropping Rashford to the bench for this match and bringing him on as a sub, then so be it. I think Ahmad's earned it. Shaw's still out, so could see Wan-Bissaka at left back again. It's needs must to a degree, but I think I would prefer to put Dalot at left back than Wan-Bissaka, but it is what it is. Who do we think Chelsea are going to play on the right? Because we see an overload a lot. Gusto gets forward a lot. They kind of overlap. So we've got Cole Palmer and Gusto. And Wan-Bissaka is good at defending, but I don't think that he's good. He's going to be able to handle kind of being outnumbered by Gusto and Palmer when one cuts in. I think that not only Wan-Bissaka, I don't think our players are good enough to handle that kind of overload in that situation. So it's going to be interesting. Is Licha ready to start? Again, there's that fine line between rushing a player back after, especially in Licha's case, after doing that early in the season, exacerbated his foot injury, and we lost him again for months. He did not look ready to start the season. Versus, if he's on the bench, is he fit enough to start? Is he ready? If we're up to me, I'd start him from the bench. But I'm also a little bit more conservative when it comes to injuries. Evans and Lindelof, I think, are up in the air, and Varane was taken off against Brentford, I think, as a precaution, I think was what Ten Hag said. So it's, don't know who's going to be fit, who's ready, who was just a precaution, who picked up a knock, who's, like Evans' case, I know he needed a couple weeks off, I think was the word. So we'll see if he's ready. I like Evans. I think that he could do a job. I think he, like Varane, his experience brings just an awareness to know where the danger is going to be. Just from the sheer amount of years he spent playing, he knows where to be, where the danger is going to come from, and he can do it. Now, his body may not be able to do it in all these situations, but speed of thought, in my opinion, trumps speed of foot. If you like Daley Blind, for instance, John Terry, those guys, they weren't quick, but they knew what they needed to do. So it seemed like they were quick because they read the game and they knew where to put themselves. And I think that's what we need in this business end of the season. Casemiro and Mount are back, but Casemiro tends to be a bit rusty. It's so weird, right? I was telling my buddy this earlier in the season. Casemiro, or last season when Casemiro missed those games through suspension and he came back and he was rusty. Casemiro is like, he's like someone like me, right? So I'm 38. When I still play. When I don't play for like a month or so, just because life's busy, and then I play again, I'm so rusty. Like I gotta shake off all the rust. And Casemiro, I think it's the opposite of what you'd expect. You might expect, okay, he's in his early 30s, he can't play every week, like Varane, for instance. I think Casemiro is the opposite. Casemiro needs to be playing, or else he just kind of collects rust, and it takes a while for him to shake that off. I think he needs to be playing. And when we go from being in Champions League and being cup competitions to playing once a week, or when he's injured, or when he's suspended, it doesn't work, and we're constantly having to restart this cycle of getting him back in a rhythm, and it doesn't help. I don't know if I trust him not to be sent off against Chelsea. We've seen him just pick up yellow cards left and right for sometimes justified, sometimes there's not even contact. But again, do you trust him not to get sent off against Chelsea? They're very quick. Guys like Mudryk and Palmer will cut in, and I don't know. Casemiro likes to do that where he gets super close and then he'll just do one of these the last second, and he'll inevitably get carded for it every time, even when there's no contact. But he is better in his position than McTominay is. I would, in a double pivot, who do you want playing? Casemiro or McTominay, to start the match. And so I think that I would prefer to see Casemiro start. What would my starting 11 look like against Chelsea? Probably going to go with Onana, Dalot, Varane, probably Lindelof, not because it's who I want, it's just who I think might be fit. Wan-Bissaka, Casemiro, Mount. I would actually start both Casemiro and Mount in the double pivot. And I would put Ahmad on the right, Bruno is the 10, and then Garnacho on the left, and then obviously Højlund. That is just my opinion, though. What are your thoughts on the Brentford match? How would you line up against Chelsea? Who would you drop? Who would you start? Leave your thoughts in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. If you want to see more episodes, don't forget to hit the like button on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, please. Follow MUFC vs. Everybody on X. That's MUFC vs. Everybody. That's random thoughts, match reactions, and just general nonsense throughout the week. I don't shy away from just chatting about United and leaving my thoughts, so check me out. I'll be taking a closer look at Erik ten Hag's time at United in the next episode. It might ruffle a few feathers, some of my thoughts. You've gotten a little bit of a glimpse tonight, but we'll go a little deeper over not just this season, but his whole tenure so far. But it's okay if we don't agree, right? I mean, that's why we're here. It would be boring if we all just agreed with each other about everything, right? Again, disclaimer, mental health professional. Don't take my thoughts on mental health as professional advice. Just want to put that out there. But thanks for checking out the first episode of the Attack podcast. It's been a blast. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me. This is the first time I'm doing this. I don't do a whole lot on camera, but when you just want to talk about United, when you want to talk about football so much, and you don't know a whole lot of people who share in that passion, it's like it's inside and it's got to get out. So I'm happy to get this started. We'll see how it goes, but I would love it if you guys would just leave your thoughts and get involved. And we'll have some guests on in the future. Maybe we'll have some people join me from the chat as well. So thanks again. I had a blast, and I will see you next time. Thank you.